We have a number of items on the docket tonight, so we will get started with the first item on our agenda, which is our roll call. So, Mr. Evans, whenever you're ready, if you could call the roll.
Ms. Chambers.
Here.
Mr. Green.
Here.
Mr. McCauley.
Here.
Mr. Eisenbacher.
Here.
Mr. Desmond.
Here.
Mr. Bossenbrook.
Here. All right, let's move on to our reading of our statement of procedure, which is an explanation of how we will conduct our hearings tonight. And for the reading of that statement of procedure, I'll turn to my immediate right, Mr. Desmond, our Vice Chair. If you could read that when you're ready.
Zoning Board of Appeals is a group of 7 of your neighbors appointed by the Troy City Council to decide on requests for variances and other matters that are brought before them. A variance is a relaxation of the literal provisions of the zoning ordinance. Applicants must indicate a hardship or practical difficulty with the land that would warrant the granting of the variance. The board will hear the items in the order that they appear in the approved agenda. When an item is called, the chairperson will verify that the applicant is present. Then the city administration will summarize the facts of the case. If there is less than a full board of 7 members present at a meeting, an applicant may request a postponement, so his or her request can be heard by a full board. If there is no request for a postponement, the applicant will then be given an opportunity to address the board to explain the justification for the action requested. After the applicant makes their presentation and answers any question that the board may have, the chairperson will open the public hearing. Any person wishing to speak on the request should raise their hand and, when recognized by the chairperson, come up to the podium. The speaker should identify themselves with name and address, indicate their relationship to the property in question, i.e. next door neighbor, lives behind property, etc., and state whether they are in favor of or against the variance request and give reasons for their opinion. Comments must be directed through the chairperson. Comments should be kept as brief as possible and closely pertain to the matter under consideration. Only one person will be recognized by the chairperson to speak at one time. At the conclusion of public comments, the chairperson will close the public hearing. Once the public hearing is closed, no other public comment will be taken unless in response to a specific question by a member of the board. The board will then make a motion to approve, deny, or postpone the request. In order for the request to pass, a minimum of 4 votes are needed. If the request is not granted, the applicant has the right to appeal the board's decision to Oakland County Circuit Court.
All right, thank you, Mr. Desmond. We will move on to the next item, which is approving the minutes from last month's meeting in October. Unless there's any discussion about the minutes as they were printed, would entertain a motion to approve.
I make the motion to approve the minutes from the October meeting.
Second. All right, motion from Mr. McCauley, seconded by Mr. Green. Mr. Evans, whenever you're ready, if you could take the call on this vote.
Mr. Bossenbrook.
Yes.
Mr. Green.
Yes.
Mr. Eisenbacher.
Yes.
Mr. McCauley.
Yes.
Ms. Chambers.
Yes.
Mr. Desmond.
Yes.
All right, October minutes have been approved as printed. We will move on to the 4th item, which is approving tonight's agenda, which was printed for us in our agenda packet. Any discussion on the agenda as printed? I have one, proposal or suggestion for members of the board to entertain, and that would be regarding the first 2 items, 5A and 5B, given that those are somewhat unique matters that are before us as an administrative appeal, and as the city attorney has prepared a memorandum for us kind of explaining the decision-making process. It's sort of a 2-step process, as I understand it, that first we have to consider and decide whether the applicant has standing to make an appeal of the decision of the Planning Commission before we can get to the underlying merits of the decision. So I guess my proposal, and happy to discuss it among the board, is that when we take up 5A and 5B, which we will do separately because they are separate appeals, but we will first consider the question of standing for each one, and then depending upon how we resolve that question, Then we will move to the merits of each particular appeal, just to sort of keep things logical and, I guess, as orderly as possible. So I submit that for just a proposal, just to kind of help move through the agenda. Mr. McCauley?
Do you need a motion for that, or?
I think it'd be appropriate to have a motion to amend the printed agenda. Do you have a question, or do you have a?
Motion.
You have a motion?
Yeah. I move that we take item 5A and divide it into item 5A1 and 5B1. And we take item 5B and make that item 5A2 and 5B2. Where 5A1 and A2 would be consideration of standing for the relevant items, and 5B1 and B2 would be evaluation of the merits of the case for each.
Okay.
Second.
Seconded. Okay, I think I just want to, the numbering and the lettering's a little confusing. So I think 5A1 would be standing, 5A2 would be the merits of that case, 5B1 would be standing, and 5B2 would be the merits. It would be the similar layout for each one. Would that be consistent with what you're saying?
Just to make sure I understand, I believe we wanted to consider standing for the first item,
Yep.
standing for the second item, then evaluate, no? Okay. Then I withdraw my motion.
Okay, well, we have to, yes, Mr. McCauley.
I make a motion that we separate the two items into a item on our agenda,
Well,
not
Mr.
get into our agenda.
Mr. Evans?
Yeah, I think we have a motion on the table, so I think it would be appropriate for the motion maker and seconder to just
To withdraw.
withdraw. So, Mr. McCall, if you would withdraw your first motion and the seconder agrees, we can get that off the table.
So maybe we should start over again.
I withdraw my motion.
It was your motion, okay.
Right.
Yeah, it was your motion and your second, okay.
Okay,
Mr. McCauley, you agree to withdraw the motion. Okay, so we'll start over with,
Apologies.
that's okay, with the motion as amended. Mr. McCauley, if you could restate your motion.
Yes, for items 5A, 1 would be to see if they have standing. 5A2, the merits of the proposal. And then also for 5B1, standing, and 5B2, the merits of the appeal. To be heard in those order.
any second on that?
Second.
Okay, we'll flip-flop. Motion by Mr. McCauley, seconded by Mr. Green. Is there any discussion to modify, amend the agenda? Okay, I think Mr. Evans, I think we're prepared to vote on that motion to amend the agenda.
Mr. Eisenbacher.
Yes.
Mr. Desmond.
Yes.
Mr. Bossenbrook.
Yes.
Ms. Chambers.
Yes.
Mr. McCauley.
Yes.
Mr. Green.
Yes.
All right, we got through it. Okay, motion or agenda has been modified and approved. We will then go on to the fifth item, which is now the hearing of cases. We have, as mentioned, we have 3 cases in front of us. A and B are similarly situated, but we will consider them separately because there are different applicants who are making those appeals. So, Mr. Evans, do you want to begin with the presentation, kind of give us an overview of what is before us?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So as printed in the agenda, this is an appeal of the Planning Commission's July 23rd, 2024 preliminary site plan approval of the proposed Waddles Square apartment. Now, this is for a vacant property on Waddles Road, and the applicant is a resident at 3966 John R. This is an overview of the area. The subject property is outlined in red. We have Waddles Road to the top or north, and John R. Road to the east. This is the zoning overlay, which shows that the subject property is zoned neighborhood node, and everything you see here in yellow is zoned single-family residential. I'll continue to zoom in just for some perspective. And these are select pages from the application in the July 23rd Planning Commission agenda packet. This is a proposed aerial view of the subject of development from the north. And these are some elevations. This is a representative site plan, one of many that I'm sure you saw in your agenda packet. And I'll return back to the aerials just to give some perspective. So the applicant, it was at 3639 Caw, it's located here, just south of the property at the northern end of the building. Now, the zoning ordinance says that the zoning board of appeals shall hear appeals of administrative decisions, which the planning commission's determination was where it is alleged that there's an error in any of law in any order, requirement, decision, or determination made by a body in the enforcement of this ordinance. Now, you've got a guidance memo from the city attorney's office that further enumerates the specifics on how that works. And that's all I have for my presentation. I'll turn it over to the board for questions for me or perhaps our staff counsel.
Mr. Eisenbacher?
One quick question, if you could jump back 1 or 2 slides to the map with the, there. One more. The gray section with the O at 3930,
Yep,
what is the O designation?
office.
That's a detention basin, though.
Well, that's the zoning of the property, not
Okay.
necessarily the use of the property.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Evans. I think, for myself, I don't know, I guess I would ask our representative from the city attorney's office who prepared, well, the office prepared the memo, and I was wondering if it's possible to sort of give us as a board a brief overview of, since this is somewhat of a unique type of appeal, which we typically don't get. Typically, we're just getting variance requests, but this is somewhat of a unique appeal and unique posture for us as a board. So if maybe you could give a quick overview of kind of what we're supposed to be doing to help us, everyone, frame our understanding.
Absolutely. I did put together just a couple points, and when the board ultimately ends up deliberating, we can put this back up so that you can go through the factors to make a record. But when we're looking at standing, there's essentially 3 things that need to be established, all 3 things. First, that the applicant was aggrieved by the decision that they are appealing to this board. Second, that they have a pecuniary or property interest involved in the decision. And lastly, the applicant will need to produce actual evidence of special damages. And I noted there that actual evidence is actually required, not a concern or a potential or a speculation about what may or might happen based on the decision made by the Planning Commission, but actual concrete evidence that there are special damages. So some of the factors that cases and case law have considered is the scope of the change, whether or not the Planning Commission's decision made a change in the zoning, the nature of the property rights involved, so you're weighing the property rights of the applicants versus the property rights of the land developer or where the land is, and looking at the property rights investments there. And then lastly, the burden, if any, on the property. And again, when looking at burdens, we're looking at not speculation, but concrete evidence of actual burden.
Mr. Green?
Could you clarify special damages?
It just means actual, like something more than what any other person in the public would endure. So it would mean something very specific to these applicants and not just something that's suffered by the public as a whole, potentially.
Understood, thank you.
Yes, sir.
All right, any other questions? Thank you for that summary. Any other questions for Mr. Evans or city staff? All right, Thank you. At this point, we will go to the appeal from Mr. Gonzalez. And so we invite the applicant or his representative to the podium. If you could just identify yourself. And I think we may have some materials that we didn't have in our original packet. But I guess I would say, first of all, if you could direct your comments to the question of standing, since that's really what we're focusing on initially, that'd be very helpful to us as a board. But whenever you're ready, sir.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Humberto Gonzalez is my name.
Just one second. I don't know that his mic is, or maybe just lean a little closer, if that helps.
It's not active. 1, 2, 3.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
We'll start again. I'll be brief. Humberto Gonzalez is my name. I'm a resident of Troy, and I live in States of Willbrook, 3939 Macaw, as you saw in the diagram. And I come to present my formal appeal to the decision taken by the Planning Commission. I think you've heard about that. My home is directly impacted because it's, the neighboring property. Way back in the day, in 18, when I purchased this property, the reason that I purchased it was because the neighborhood shared my values, staging life, work ethics, etc. So it was a calm, quiet neighborhood with and most importantly, a single-family unit area subdivision. The new development that has been proposed and preliminary approved by the Planning Commission puts really at jeopardy that original thought of me and my commitment to the community and of purchasing this property. All neighbors of mine have expressed their discontent on this approval and have, presented that to the Planning Commission. However, we were not really heard that we wanted to keep this into a single-family community. Very briefly, I will comment my personal discontent with the Planning Commission, where a voting member approved when he didn't have the appropriate documents, and he made that clear immediately prior to voting. 2 additional voting members cited that the reason of their approval was that they wanted other members to have access to high-quality education. And from my perspective, a high mortgage value should not be put to that sort of conundrum. The properties that we're talking about here are in the realm of $500,000 to $1 million. That means that we pay a substantial amount of monthly money. We need to work hard for it, and we're really not up for having neighbors that paid a third of that, and more so the density that is being proposed. So to the Zoning Commission in particular, the piece of land in particular was a family unit complex, but then it changed. Then it changed to a high density living unit. And I am not clear and want to ask you personally and formally to give us instruction or information that the appropriate protocol was followed in the change of this zoning, And so basically, as it stands, and to try to answer the questions that are established there, this personally affects me because right now, to my north, I have 0 neighbors. Now I've been asked to have a parking lot and have 52 neighbors. I'm also being asked to not longer have a forest, but have a parking lot and 52 neighbors. This certainly produces light, noise, this back and forth going of people. So this does impact my quality of life. This particular development will be breathing in my master bedroom, not anywhere in the property, but where I need to rest. So, in closing, I would like to tell you that our research shows that when multi-complex units are built besides residential neighborhoods, like mine, single unit property, there's about a 14% price drop. To me, that means $82,000. I don't have that kind of money to drop away. I pay my mortgage every month, and I have a hard time paying for that, so I'm not willing to devaluate the property value. And the final piece is I have Fred Sybick and Pete Wilkins, who are my agents, and I will yield the rest of my time so they can show you additional information that is pertinent on this appeal.
Good evening. My name is Fred Shibish, and I live on 3842 Wayfair, and I'm a neighbor of the two appellants here under A and B, both Humberto and Jason. And they asked me to speak on their behalf as an agent, so if Paul can put up the items here that we want to review. That's not quite it, but... All right. Can I give it a try now, Mr. Evans, or?
We should be ready.
Should be ready, okay. All right, on the first page that I have, and I believe everybody has booklets that we were dropped off earlier today. Wattle Square was developed starting in 1998. 54 homes were built there in that particular time frame. They're all single-family homes. The adjacent 2.1 acreage that is in question right now was also designated as family homes at that time. And if we flip over to the first page, I'm going to give you a little better view of that particular piece of property. This is an overview of the property in question. The 2.1 acres are basically the green trees that we see there. And then we have the adjacent homes here. Mr. Humberto is over here, and then we also have Jason over here. And you can see the rest of the particular homes are all single-family homes. The one question that Mr. I believe Green had, this area is a retention basin over here. That's that O that you were asking about. That's a retention basin right there. Was it Mr. Eisenbach? Yeah? Okay. All right. Just wanted everybody to understand that. Going forward, here's some ground views of the property, which would be the next couple of pictures that we have in here, and I just want everybody to, take a good look at that, just so they, have a good idea of what's going on, especially when you have homes surrounding that whole particular area on two sides. Okay. At that time, again, the builder, Addo Construction, wanted to build 6 family homes in that particular 2.1 acres. All right. However, he decided not to build it because he was going to be responsible for building a retention basin there, and he decided he didn't want to lose a lot. All right. That retention basin that exists there right now was not there before. Neither were the other homes except for Wattle Square. So he pretty much had left the property undeveloped. In 1995, at the same time, Wattle Square subdivision fought and won a ban on a drive-through pharmacy that was proposed for that area. The city council was very instrumental in denying that request because of noise, pollution, light, and everything else. So we were very happy about that, but also very instrumental. And I have some documents here after the first couple of pages that show some of the activity that was going on at that particular time fighting that whole situation where they wanted to build a drive-through pharmacy at that point in time, which would have required them pushing back the Rite Aid, the old Rite Aid property back 24 more feet, which would have infringed on that 2.1 acres there as well. So, again, I just wanted to make sure everybody has a little bit of a history going back to this, because we had gone through this once before. And just to show you what's been going on in the meantime, we have a situation across the street, which would be on the northeast corner. We have the Enclave of Troy, which was developed in 2001. That's an aerial view of that, and we're talking about this whole section in through here is all part of the Enclave. Originally, that was going to be wanted to be a commercial property. They wanted to put a Kroger's in there. All the residents fought that. And we got to the point where they were able to build 32 condominium complexes in there, which was an appropriate situation, and it was a good transition up to Mount Vernon property over there. It contains 32 units, and it pretty much butts on Mount Vernon, both on the north side and on the west side. So there's the beginning, that's the entrance to the Enclave of Troy, which is a very nice entrance. There's part of the street views, and another one, which I'm sorry is upside down, another street view of the Enclave, okay? They did a great job there. And again, it was in transition, nice transition. Yes, sir.
I have a question. Is this your presentations for why you should have standing before us today, or is this your presentation on why we should be looking at the decision by the Planning Commission?
Well, I'm backing up Humberto's, why he is appealing the whole situation. And what I'm trying to do is show a little bit of history here and geography.
Okay.
So that everybody
So
has
we are heading towards standing.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right, in 2011, the 2.1 acres was rezoned to a neighborhood node, okay? Up to that point in time, it was still single-family residence, all right? And nothing had been done since 1995 with that piece of property. Now, my feeling is, at this point in time, did the city of Troy follow proper protocol? If you look at the overhead right now, there are two things that the city of Troy had to do, and I question this of the city. Did they do it? I don't know. I would like a response to it. Number one, did they publish it in a circular? It has to be done in a newspaper. And two, there has to be a public hearing on it afterwards. Does anybody here know at this point in time if that was done or not? Don't know.
We're asking you to provide evidence. At that time, I was part of the process, and I saw the public hearings that happened and the notices in the newspaper, like there was a notice for this meeting today.
Was there a notice in the, what paper was it published in?
The city's newspaper of record is always publishing notices of public hearings, like the one today.
It has to be.
Right
It has
now.
to be. It has to be circulated throughout the Troy.
Can I just redirect this?
Yes, please.
This board is not really in a position to relitigate something that was decided however many years ago. Mr. Eisenbacher has a personal experience, but that's not what we're supposed to be considering tonight on this specific question. So I think going back to Mr. McCauley's question, if you could kind of appreciate the history of the subdivision, but focus us on these specific questions that we're trying to address tonight. That'd be helpful.
Again, this is some history and geography behind this whole situation, because nothing had risen up until this year where this development was proposed as a high-density area. This has never been this situation before that. It was always single-family. And my point was that change ever published and ever made public? Okay? All right. Going on. In 2018, we have the development of the estates of Willowbrook, which is where Humberto lives here. And unfortunately, that's a street, which is upside down, I'm sorry. And he is at the end of that street looking right into that 2.1 acreage. All right, here's another view of the estates of Willowbrook, and another one. All right. So you can see how this acreage butts up to that property. I'd like to point out there are several new developments that are going on up and down Wattles right now. And 2 of the 3 are all single-family homes. The one at Rochester and Wattles, right behind the Wendy's there, they're getting ready to build single-family homes. We have another one right off of Livernois, right across from City Council. Those are all single-family homes. We also have a apartment complex that was built off of Wattles and Crooks. And they have the proper, what I call the proper transition there. There really isn't that with this proposal right now for the apartment complex on Wattles. There's the sign up on the one by Wattles and John R. where Mondrian is building. That's the acreage that's on that one. Another piece of the acreage, another shot there. This is a single-family homes that's going up on Livernois, right across the street. All single-family homes. Then we have the Westington, which is the apartment complex I was talking about. And look at the transition area we have here. You don't see that in the apartment complex that the Adel Construction is proposing. It's fantastic. We've got 20 feet from the edge of the parking lot to Umberto's and Jason's property, 20 feet. That's not a green space, and that's not a transition. I guess my question then is, why is the city allowing for 54 apartment units to be crammed into a 2.1 acre? Transitional land is pretty much non-existent. Like I said, only 20 feet separate the parking space from the individual's property. You have 32 parking spaces that will be butting up to the 2 neighborhoods, all right? This type of parking arrangements and egress can only add to potential safety and security items. It seems to me that precedent has already been set when the drive-through pharmacy proposal was rejected in 1995. We already have a precedent set to reject areas because of the noise, lighting, and pollution. So why are we allowing this to happen? Here is an overhead of the egresses in this apartment complex. We have 2 going out to Wattles, 1 going out to John R. And if you really want to see, there's 1 going out to John R. You think that's an egress? Those are blind spots. People are going to get hurt there. There's the 1 going out to Wattles. And the little building you see there on the corner on the left-hand side, that's supposed to be the community center. I'm sorry, that's not a community center. That's asking for trouble. So I guess at this point in time, in behalf of my neighbors, I really think that you should reconsider this whole development. Thank you.
All right, thank you, sir. Do you have any questions from members of the board? I guess if I could have the applicant and the representative up 1 second, I just want to make sure I understand. Just, sir, if you also come up if necessary. I just want to be very specific. When we're talking about the question of standing and the third element, which is what was called special damages, that makes this applicant's damages claim different than a general allegation of damages suffered by the public more broadly. What specific special damages, as concisely as you can say, have you suffered?
Right now, today, none. But the projected damages are going to be property value, health, noise, alteration of quality of life.
For property value, what what is, I guess, what is your basis for property value? For your property, I'm not talking about generally, a general sense that property values are going to go up or down, but for your property, what do you base that on?
Well, we've done our due diligence. We've researched what happens to single-family units when they have a multi-complex unit built besides them, and what happens, just give me 1 second, what happens is that the property value drops, and it drops about 13 to 14%. And as I presented to you, my property value is $600,000. So that means $80,000.
Realtor.com has published this, by the way.
Realtor.com is publishing that maybe as a general statement, but is it specific to this property?
Yes, it is.
It is?
Yes, it is.
Did Realtor.com prepare something specific for this parcel?
Not specific to that, but again, they have noted, as Humberto said, what happens when you have adjacent property and when you have multiple apartment complexes going up. We have one already at 16 Mile and John R. that just went up. This is another one that's being proposed. And unfortunately, the city of Troy has made neighborhood nodes on the east side of Troy over 30, and on the west side, there's less than 11. So what do you think that all those neighborhood nodes are going to be? Apartment complexes or something similar to it? Yes.
John?
Hold on a second. Can I ask? Go ahead.
Please.
Do you have any physical evidence
Physical evidence of?
of the property values dropping? Do you have a written letter from somebody, anything, any physical evidence? Not what you're telling us, physical evidence.
I can produce that evidence.
You're supposed to have it today.
Right now, with all due respect, Mr. McCauley, the property has not been built, so I cannot show you physical evidence that the property value has dropped.
Okay.
There's just no way to do that. But I can by all means produce the information that I'm speaking about.
Thank you.
I guess I have one other question that I just want to make sure. I guess I don't quite understand from the presentation. I mean, I understand the value and why a property owner would want to have a vacant lot next to them, but it happens very often that someone may live on a property that has a vacant lot to the right or to the left. Someone buys that property, builds on it. I mean, is that a reasonable expectation that you're just going to have a vacant lot next to you for
Sure.
however long you're going to own the property?
Thank you. I think that's a reasonable question. If you were to present to me the idea that a house is going to be there, I would have no problems, because that is what the zone looks like. That's what the subdivision looks like. I don't know if any of the voting zone members had the opportunity to physically be there, but if you go there, you would see that this house. So if you put another house besides mine, I'm fine with that. But I'm just not fine with 52 apartment complex, cars coming back and forth, light, noise, etc.
I think the good point was that this was a single-family zone until 2011. Why? Why did the builder wait 35 years to do something about it?
Did I respond to your question?
Yep, thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. Did you, Mr. Eisenbacher?
No, Mr.
Did,
Okay.
okay.
Okay. So when you purchased this house and you purchased the land from Mondrian, who's the builder,
Yes, sir.
did you check and see what the zoning was for the adjacent property? Because that hasn't changed since,
That has not changed.
great. So you expected something different from what the property is zoned. And I'm having a very hard time seeing any evidence of your specific property being affected when that property is being used as it's zoned. I mean, that property is not owned by the city. It's not owned by a government entity, which means the property owner has the freedom to choose when they use it and how they use it, as long as they play by the rules. We need to have, as the attorney pointed out, we have to have certain specific criteria for considering this, and I haven't seen any of that specific criteria presented, unfortunately.
What is the criteria that you're looking for?
Well, I mean, it's what was summarized at the beginning of the meeting, that I think the one Mr. Eisenbacher is focusing on is the applicant providing evidence of special damages that's, again, not specific, or not sort of generalized concern about noise, aesthetics, but something that's very specific to the actual applicant that differentiates them from the person living next to them or the person living, down the street.
As it stands, there's been no change to the 2.1 acres that are neighboring me. My question back to you is, how do you expect me to produce evidence of harm when nothing has changed? You're asking me for evidence of damage. How can I produce that if nothing has changed?
Well, we're not here to answer questions per se. We've been given the standards, not just by the city attorney, but this is the law of Michigan. And so this is what we have to demonstrate. We have to have the applicant demonstrate for us to be able to move forward with even hearing the merits. So it's not the burden on us to prove special damages. We have to just find evidence that supports it. No, sir, we're not. No. There'll be a time of public comment if you want to speak, but unless you're with the applicant, we'll just hold off.
Okay.
You did call me out specifically.
If you're with him, you're welcome to come forward and identify yourself and speak, if that would.
My name is Pete Wilkins. I live at 3905 Wayfair. I'm in the Wattle Square subdivision that is adjacent to the estates of Willowbrook. You had asked specifically for something that was unique to his particular situation. Humberto, I believe in his application, submitted the plans that show the 20 feet, and there's about 10 feet from that point, that property line, to his master bedroom. So the proximity there is only about 30 feet from where he's sleeping at night to the 30 vehicles that'll be parked along that property line. So that is something that's very specific to him and his situation that is different from the other properties that are there.
Okay, Mr. Green, did you have your hand up?
I did. You have referenced in a letter and here a Realtor.com study report article. If that is backed by data and you can produce it, that could constitute some form of material evidence. However, in my searches, I have been unable to locate that article.
We are happy to produce that information and provide it to you upon request.
Sure, I can, I actually do, I had the link, I have to pull up the URL, but in here, I make reference to it. The data that they used was from the U.S. Census Bureau. Specifically, in this, I was going to refer to the May 28th meeting. One of the council members there had spoke to it as if the U.S. Census was performing the study, and I wanted to make sure that it was clarified. The census did not actually directly study this at all. They only run surveys for either like American Community Survey or the American Housing Survey, and that data is available obviously for others to use in their studies. And specifically, the Realtor.com study that I can get you the URL for it. They basically looked at looking at trends that affect basically decreased property value. They performed this in 2016. There were 9 trends that they identified on there. One of which was high density, high concentration of renters in an area, and that was about a 13.8% reduction that they found using the data from the American Community Survey.
Okay, great. I appreciate that. Right now, I believe that does not constitute, I could be wrong, physical presentation of that evidence. You are stating it. I would tend to trust you, but I cannot take that on faith.
Sure. How would you like me to resolve that?
That I can't speak to.
Okay.
Well, just to say it again, that is a survey talking about a general trend, right? So that would mean you could arguably say that that's a decrease in property value to anyone in the neighborhood, not just specific to that property. I mean, if you're applying that report, then anyone in the neighborhood can make that same argument that my property value is going to drop 13.8%. And that's not damages that are specific to that property. That is just, again, whether it's an accurate survey or not, would apply across the board. So again, I think that's a problem of, I don't see how that is specific to this property versus the claim that it's just going to generally diminish property values, if we take that to be hypothetically true. Okay, any other questions from members of the board? Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. Okay, at this point, we will move on to the public hearing portion of this petition or this appeal. So any member of the public who wishes to speak as to this particular item is welcome to come to the podium. Again, I'll remind anyone who wishes to speak that we're, again, focusing on the question of standing, if that would be something that would help us understand this issue. But at this point, we will open up the public hearing for anyone who wishes to speak. All right, let's see. Yes, sir. Feel free to come forward if you would identify yourself, please.
Hi, my name is Hari Babu Batla. I'm at 3930 Makar Drive, just adjacent to his home. I'm literally 100 feet, within 100 feet of the proposed construction apartments. So I wanted to bring up the safety point into this forum. And previously, I think he showed the picture that there are 3 access points, 2 into Wattles and 1 into Jana, right? And if you see, I think you would have noticed that right across the signals, those 3 access points are right across the signals. And Athens High School is right across the signals. I mean, after the signals. And every day morning, kids used to walk, back and forth from the school and going to school, and so many cars in the peak hours. And during the planning, earlier meetings, we raised a point that if they would have done any traffic study, they did not do, and they just did some traffic memo, and they mentioned for the size of these 59 units, they didn't do the traffic study. But I would like to bring it up to you. What if there is any one security incident happened, because most of the school year is going to be, mornings are going to be dark. Kids used to walk on the walkway, and if you build 54 units and each home will have 2 cars, each apartment will have minimum 2 cars, 100 plus cars will go to office or some, they also need to get into the Wattles or Rite Aid. Just within 100 feet, not even 100 feet, 50 feet, within 50 feet to the signals. So how is it possible to manage the traffic at the closest signals? That is one major concern to us. And as immediate, I'm living in within 100 feet of the proposed apartments. Definitely, it's going to be a privacy issues, because we have invested our lifetime savings to buy to buy this house, and at that time, and you questioned to them that was there any email or any did we check with the builder? I did send an email to builder, and she responded back to me, but I was searching for the email. I couldn't find it, but I can get that mail. I did ask her if there was a plan to extend that Maka towards the north to Wattles. And she told that it's not a neighborhood node zone, and it's a commercial zone, she mentioned to me, and they don't have any plan to build any house after our homes, after end of the Maka Drive currently. And I have email and I can forward that. But one safety, right across the signals, there are 3 access points, and again, on the Wattles, there is another access point to opposite neighborhood. There are going to be two access points right opposite. So I would request you to think about how the traffic is going to be controlled, particularly during school timings. It's very, 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 very scary situation for kids. If single incident happen, we cannot take it back. And at the same time, we are just right across, we are going to live across the neighbor apartments, and it's really privacy issue and noise issue, and definitely there will be a lot of problems for us as part of privacy and pollution and everything.
All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you for your statement. Are there any other public comment from? All right, just step forward, and if you would identify yourself.
Yes, my name is Susan Kuhn, 2172 East Wattles Road, and I was mailed an invitation to come tonight. Actually, I have attended the Planning Commission meetings about the same subject, and also the City Council meeting before it went to the Planning Commission. Wattles Road shows on the diagram 2 entrances, and there are already obviously 2 entrances on both sides of the Rite Aid going back into the property. The issue that I have is that Wattles Road narrows after you hit the Rite Aid at Wayfarer, which is the subdivision, obviously, which has been there the longest. It narrows from 3 lanes down to 2 lanes, and I tell people, if you stay in the lane that ends, you automatically go right into my driveway. If you don't go into my driveway, you hit my mailbox, which is not a big deal because people can find my house. There are only 3 residential houses on Wattles Road before you go to the next subdivision. My concern is tomorrow's trash day in Troy. I took my trash out tonight, and I'm just wondering where the trash for these 52 people with the recycle bins, with the regular trash, with the leaves, with all the things that go on, where is all that going to be? Do they have congregate mailboxes? On Wayfarer Road, their mailboxes are right at the entrance of the subdivision, and sometimes that traffic gets backed up for the residents because there's only one mail spot, and that mail person is usually there a half an hour unloading the mail. I just think that it's a bad idea, and I'm here basically to support the people of the Wayfarer subdivision and also the new subdivision behind it. When I bought my house in 1991, the Wayfarer subdivision was not even completed, and it was a single driveway going into that subdivision, which the residents loved. When the new subdivision on John R. was developed recently with the big, beautiful homes, the 2 subdivisions were connected, and it's fine because there's only 1 entrance off of Wayfarer and 1 entrance off of John R. Now there's going to be 3 entrances for the new subdivision, or for this new Wattles apartments, which I think is just a big problem for traffic for all corners, especially with the high school being literally across the street, kitty corner. Too much traffic, too much going on, and I just wanted to oppose the agenda item.
All right, thank you, ma'am. Is there anyone else who? Yes, Mr. Green.
I would just like to remind those who are coming to speak that at the moment, I believe, the only thing that we're looking for public comment on would be regarding the standing of this item.
That's correct. I mean, I think generally I would say a lot of these topics, I think were addressed by the Planning Commission. And at this point, it's not really something that we're considering right now. But members of the public are welcome to come forward on the question of standing. We'd be happy to hear from anyone who wishes to speak. Sir, you're welcome to come forward. Please identify yourself.
Yeah, I'm David Lemieux. I'm at 2051 Applewood Drive, which is right across from the developed property. And I had some of the same concerns. If any of you have been in that area, which I'm sure you haven't, it would just completely amaze you that the traffic, whatever the road folks that came in there and did their analysis on it and gave an approval to put a high-density structure there or a living area with, I think it comes out, and I did it kind of a mathematical thing. They're packing in about 11 density of 11 to 1 in that one area. Now, that's 120 potential cars. If you leave our sub any given morning, you are in a backed up line on Waddles Road. In fact, there's a sign there to not block the intersection. So I would like to know who did the traffic analysis on this and where do I get in touch with these people? You can keep going where you are, but I would like to find out where these people approve this type of a project with, and what type of background they had in it, because it's pretty straightforward if you look at the traffic patterns there. There is a 300 feet from Waddles is a exit. You're talking across the street, 50 feet or 100 feet, 2 more exits coming out now. That'll be new. It'll have 11 times, potentially 10 times the amount of traffic that's coming out of that whole sub that abates this new area. So that's my biggest complaint would be the traffic. And if you, the other question I had, if I do metrics now on noise pollution, light pollution, air quality, and I get those values right now, and 3 years from now, 2 years, or they build this, can I come back and sue somebody for damages when I show that there is noise pollution, there is traffic, there is damages from a standpoint that the EPA even puts out their numbers? So is that something that we can come back and legally?
Sir, we're not giving legal advice.
Okay.
But we're looking at the question.
All right, well, that's the thing. It's the traffic is a real issue,
right.
So.
Thank you. Okay, I think we'll turn to, is there any written, Mr. Desmond, anything written public comment that we would want to just mention?
So relative to this, this particular item, and I guess because 5A1, 2, and 5B1, 2 are so similar, I'm basically just going to give all of the correspondence for those and then separate out correspondence for the next agenda item. But we do have one letter from Mr. Richard Otto, who is a construction company that wants to build this, basically urging to proceed on the project, obviously citing all of the effort and work that has been put into working with the city to do that. We have 2 written letters opposing that, one from Ms. Brenda Lewis on 2030 Applewood Drive. She opposes it, and I will summarize the letters based on noise and traffic, the increase of both of those, too much congestion, reduction in green space, and effects on property values. There is another one from Mr. Lawrence Hugh of 2046 Applewood Drive, who also opposes it for largely the same reasons: traffic, lack of green space, and the potential for increases in crime and drug trafficking and other things. So that's the written correspondence we have relative to these.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Desmond. We will close the public hearing. And at this point, we will return it back to the board for discussion. Mr. Desmond?
Just more of a comment. I am a real estate broker. I've been doing this 15 years. I own a title company, so I'm not taking Realtor.com data into account, but I'm also a real estate investor, and we run a lot of scenarios when we're looking at the acquisition of property to flip or develop or do anything like that. And just using statistics from Oakland County and Macomb County, the areas that I operate in, we factor in a 10% value reduction for any property that directly abuts commercial buildings, large multifamily, or major roadways. And that data was based on a summary of appraisal and list price averages versus non-abutting properties. So I'm not familiar with the 13 to 14% number from Realtor, but I do know personally that, and I have, this has been backed up and affirmed with appraisals on properties that we have done after they've been, developed or sold or just listed, and 10% is the number that we use as a pretty consistent value reduction. And that is not in general for like an entire neighborhood that would be next to a complex or anything like that, but that would be for the properties that directly abut and touch those major roadways or properties. That's not peer-reviewed data. That is my personal experience and the general norm that investors use for a property that's like that. So just to throw that number in there, I think it's a little disingenuous to pretend that there would not be a direct value reduction for properties that abut directly to a development like this. It will have an impact. Specifically what that can be, I can only go off my historical numbers, and that's 10%. So just that note.
Mr. Green.
I could be wrong, but I believe I found the applicant's referenced note from Realtor.com, and I actually don't think it is applicable because it is referencing a high concentration of renters with a drag of 13.8%, and that specifically says, does a cluster of rental buildings or lots of them lower the property value in the neighborhood? And they say, and this is lacking their supporting data, but it says, while it is hard to do an analysis down to every property, we found that zip codes, so this is again broad, not special, with a higher than average concentration of renters have lower property values compared to the county they are located in. They do say it's from the American Community Survey. That said, again, this is not special damages and is a bit vague, and I found multiple articles referencing essentially the contrary. So I cannot specify, but I'm inclined to discard the broader data and more likely to consider my colleague.
Any other comments from members of the board? Mr. McCauley.
So listening to the applicant's grievance, I really didn't hear anything outside the ordinary as far as it was concerned. Hearing light, noise, traffic, all those things would be general, not specific. Understand that I was in your place, Mr. Gonzalez. If you came to my house, you'd be looking at it going, this looks really familiar to what you're dealing with. That's why I'm up here now, because we were able to work with and deal with and negotiate and take care of the things that we needed to regarding that. But so I have a good understanding from where you're at. I live at Rochester Road and 17 Mile, so I'm very familiar with the area. My Rite Aid's out of business. So from that standpoint, when I first looked at this, my first thing in my mind, I wanted to say, what's going on? And when I look at this, they have a by right of building. That means basically they met the city ordinances, they met the city standards, they did everything they were supposed to regarding what was necessary to build there. There's nothing out of sorts, nothing that stands out. They can say, I'm aggrieved because of this. It's not like they're taking and putting that Rite Aid next door to you in the house between you and the house next to you. Even though it might be zoned for that, they're not doing that. So from that standpoint, I look at, because they built according to by right what they did, I hear no special damages in your grievance. You're more than anything is you should have been taking care of this, or this should have been taken care of back when they rezoned it, and when they redid the master plan, because that's happened during your tenure, that if you've lived there since 2011, or if you moved there after 2011, you moved in, that was already in place. So that's something that you should have researched before you did that. So I'm looking at this as, I don't see any standing as far as you coming before our board, as far as that's concerned. So that's, as far as I'm concerned, I'm saying no standing.
Okay, do we have any, unless there's any further discussion, does a member want to present a motion for or against finding a standing? Mr. McCauley.
My question is, how do we present this as a motion? Because this is different than our normal template that we use for motions, isn't it?
So you can just make a motion, since we did separate the agenda, so you'd be ruling on 5-1, I believe, and you would be ruling on whether or not, or making a determination on whether or not the applicant has standing, obviously taking into consideration the factors and putting those into whatever motion is put forth before the board.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. McCauley.
I'd like to make a motion. I'd like to make a motion that the applicant has no standing in regards to the Planning Commission for their grievance as far as this is concerned. There is no factual evidence presented. There's no special damages that we saw in the process. So at this point in time, I make a motion to deny their appeal or for standing.
Is there a second?
Yes, I second.
Okay, motion from Mr. McCauley, seconded by Mr. Eisenbacher. This will be a motion to effectively deny the appeal on the basis of standing. Any further discussion? Yes, did you have a comment, Mr. Evans?
No.
Oh, okay, sorry. Unless there's any further discussion, members of the board, I think we will proceed to a vote. Oh, Mr. Eisenbacher.
I just want to enter into our video evidence that I agree that the evidence was not presented. The closest thing we had to evidence was from the board itself, from the professional experience of one of the members. We didn't receive an appraisal from the property with the theoretical house development built. There's no traffic study data even from the apartment complex across the street for how many vehicles per day they see or traffic trips per day they see. There's no evidence of any of the things that were laid out by our city attorney to give us enough standing to question the decision by the Planning Commission. And it's an evidence-based decision that we have to make. It's not based on what you're concerned about or what questions you have. We have to have evidence to overturn another board's decision, and we don't have that evidence.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah,
I would
Mr.
just
Evans.
like to, I guess, append to what I said earlier too, and I just want to clarify that I wasn't necessarily indicating that the purchaser of that property is not within their rights to develop it just because it would affect the valuation. So it's something that I would take into account if I was doing a development like that, like if I was in that property and like I was going to flip it and it was next to an apartment building, I would factor that into my numbers. But that unfortunate dynamic does not prohibit the property owner from being able to develop their property and do as they see fit either. So, I mean, I just wanted to have that on record. I'm not saying that is, but I do think that it does affect the value, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they still can't develop their property over that either, so.
All right, thank you. All right, Mr. Green.
I just have a sort of a final note on this, I think. The applicant appeared frustrated that we are asking for material evidence, physical evidence of something which has not yet occurred. I could be wrong, and please correct me if I'm mistaken. However, I believe that included in this would be the ability to demonstrate with evidence likely damages, again, from corresponding nearby properties or studies of proximal homes directly next to for special damages to properties like this, that sort of thing. So while admittedly it's a bit of a tricky ask, I believe that is the sort of thing that we would have been looking for, unfortunately. Coming with, I believe I can show you a reference, is insufficient to bring to, we are a quasi-judicial body. We have to consider the evidence in that firm manner, so.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Green. Let's move then to our vote. The pending motion is a motion to deny based on lack of standing. That's the motion before us. Mr. Evans, whenever you're ready.
Mr. McCauley,
Yes.
Ms. Chambers,
Yes.
Mr. Desmond,
No.
Mr. Bossenbrook,
Yes.
Mr. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Eisenbacher.
Yes.
Motion to deny the application has been granted. That means we will move on to item 5B, which is going to seem like Groundhog Day, I guess, because it's largely the same application, different applicant. Unless Mr. Evans, you're welcome to present this as well to kick us off, and then we'll turn it over to the applicant.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As indicated in the agenda, this is an appeal to the Planning Commission's July 23rd, 2024 preliminary site plan approval of the proposed Waddle Square Apartments. We have aerials shown up on the overheads, and the subject property of the Planning Commission's decision is outlined in red. Zoning map shows that the subject property zoning is neighborhood node, and the applicant's property, everything in yellow, is zoned single-family residential. Further zooming in to give perspective. And these are some select slides showing the scope of the development that the Planning Commission approved. This is looking north from Waddles Road. That's the proposed development there. Some elevations. This is a one page of many site plan pages representative of the approved development. And I'll bring it back to this aerial. Now the applicant here lives at on McCaw. 3953, I'm sorry, Wayfair. So this particular applicant lives adjacent to the approved development to the east. So I'll turn it back over to the board for any questions.
Does the board have any other questions for city staff? Nope. All right, thank you, Mr. Evans. We will invite the applicant for, is it Mr. Zhang? If I pronounced it incorrectly, I'm sorry. And/or his representative, if you'd like to come forward. And again, we're going to focus first on the question of standing. And whenever you're ready, sir.
Hey, good morning. My name is Xingyong Zhang. I also go with Jason. So I'm a resident of the Wayfair 3953. So right next to the multiplex apartments gonna be built there. As you can see, like basically my backyard is right next to the parking lots there. So I'm appealing the decision, the Planning Commission, which approved the development of the Waddle Square Apartments. So you guys are looking for like special damage to like my family and my house. So apparently, when I moved in like 3 years ago, the selling point of the house is the privacy of the like small forest in my backyard, and now like that's gonna be replaced by multiplex apartments. And I know like you guys are looking for like evidence like how much value my house is gonna be depreciated. I'm really disappointed like you guys are looking for like evidence that's gonna happen in the future. So are you saying like I should come back like 3 years later, and then when the multiplex apartment already built and my house price already dropped like 30%, and then I come here, can you still overturn and then demolish the apartments and bring back my house? I don't think so, right? My understanding that originally, the property in question was zoned single family, like, and I'm okay, like, if we have like more single family homes there, or just like the other side of the Waddles, they have like those condos, very nice neighborhoods, but still like, it's not like to put up 54 apartment units there. And with the parking lots, those, if they turn on their high beam lights, those are gonna shoot into directly my master bedroom. I guess you guys looking for hard physical evidence. Okay, so here I turn my flashlight. Can any of you like stare into this flashlight for like 10 minutes? Right? And like who can prevent like those cars don't turn on high beam, or they don't accidentally turn on high beams and shoot into my bedroom? And also like my wife, she's a very sensitive and very light sleeper. She can even hear the clock ticking. And then, you know, suddenly there are 54 units, I would say not like 108 cars, but definitely at least 60, 70 cars. Who can assure that like in the midnight, no one accidentally like hit, you know, their car horn, or like accidentally trigger the alarm? It's just gonna sound. If there's only just a condo or single family homes, I think the probability of the accidentally hit the car horn or alarms will definitely very small comparing to like 108 cars. And when we move in, like just me and my wife, and now we have two little adorable kids. One is 3.5 and one is only 1 year old. I don't know like what happens when the apartment builds there, how that gonna affect their growth. Like one of them will definitely stay in one of the bedrooms that also facing the parking lots there, say next to our master bedroom. I'm not sure like whether one of the kids also like, you know, have the sensitive listening issues. And like regarding the house value depreciation, I think Mr. Desmond, he has the experience of the adjacent house, you know, depreciated by like roughly 10%. I hope you guys can put yourself in the shoes of mine. Think about if you have multiplex apartments built behind your backyard, and then you would think like your house price would go up in 3 years, in 10 years? I don't think so. And you say like we don't have like physical or actual evidence. We brought up the evidence from Realtor.com, but then you guys say like that's general. I'm saying like the apartment gonna build is right next to my family, and you say like it's just general depreciation, not specific to my house? I don't think so. Yeah, and sorry, I'm a little bit emotion, because I am the house owner. I just moved in 3 years ago. When I moved in, I don't know like that's gonna be like apartments behind my backyard. If I know that, I don't even think about moving. And to tell you the truth, like my left and right neighbors, the reason they are not coming, because they have been there for like 20, 30 years, and their kids already grown up, and then they are thinking moving out. And they don't want to spend like this $500 appealing fees. The reason I'm here because I have good neighbors like Fred, like Pete. They fight along with us. And, you know, and I'm the direct impact of this property. I should stand up. I don't care about like that $500 just to go away. I just want to stand here to speak up my standing point. I don't want to like repeat a lot of, you know, I guess you may think I have the similar application as my neighbor Roberto. yes, we are next to, we are the adjacent neighbors. But I just want to say, definitely the special damage to our family is gonna impact my wife's house, my kids' growth, and definitely the house value. I have Fred, who is here as a very good neighbor with me. Yeah, if you guys have any questions, I'm glad to answer.
All right, thank you, sir. Any questions from members of the board? Mr. Eisenbacher.
Did the Realtor, or did you check to see who owned the property behind your house?
No. My question to you is, will you check like something like that when you move in?
Yes.
And like, does your agent tells you like what's gonna be built there?
When I purchased my house and I live within a mile, I specifically talked to the neighbors that were there. I bought a house that had 4 neighbors on the sides, and I looked at the property around to make sure there were no surprises. Unfortunately, that's part of due diligence, and if you don't own the property, it's very difficult to mandate that it stay the way it is.
What do you say to those of us who've been there 30-plus years and did do our due diligence check, and it was single-family homes?
Unfortunately, the zoning did change. That is outside of my control. The zoning changed, and the applicant is following the rules. We need evidence to do a first stage for standing, then we need evidence for a second stage to overturn the decision. Without that, he'd simply go to court and our decision would be thrown out, and all it would be is a little delay for him.
Okay, I'm going to give you 2 points of evidence that I didn't bring up before. Mr. Eisenbach, you yourself talked about traffic and everything else. This was done by your engineering department. All right, there's 261 accidents in that area.
Sir, can you go back to the podium, please, so we can hear you?
We need
You
to
want
hear.
this back?
We need to hear.
You want this back?
It needs to be recorded by the public.
I want to make sure that's evidence. 271 accidents in 4 years in that area. Put in 120 parking spaces, that you're going to have more accidents, especially the way Waddles is laid out, okay? I can't believe that you guys are ignoring the fact that we had precedent in having that development vetoed by the city council back in 1995. You guys are ignoring that precedent for noise, pollution, and everything else. I don't know why you're ignoring it.
Well, sir, that's not precedent.
It is
As
precedent.
Mr. Eisenbacher said, that the zoning changed.
No, I'm talking about when the city council voted against allowing the Addo construction, all right, to put in the drive-in pharmacy. They vetoed that because of noise, lighting, pollution. And now we want to add something even more? You're avoiding that whole topic. It has nothing to do with zoning.
That's not in our
The
remit.
master plan changed and the zoning changed since that time. That's outside of our scope.
But there's precedent set that you could not do that. I don't see why.
They made a law that...
Pardon?
They didn't make a law. They made a decision.
That's right. But it was a precedent.
Not a binding
It's precedent setting. Yes, it is. Absolutely. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other questions from members of the board? Yes, Mr. Green?
You have questioned how you were supposed to show. So I'll say again, while it is difficult to put forward something incredibly precise, the question would be, do you have anything showing that other homes that are specifically adjacent to, as you potentially will be, apartment complexes, suffer additional damages or harm relative to those that are not right there, so that you can show that there is some basis behind that. We have to work, we cannot work with even our potential personal feelings that there may be something. We need the evidence. So if we could have something like that, we could do it. I've lived in an apartment complex, and when you live in an apartment complex, you end up with that similar level of traffic, right? You have the people around you, you have windows usually on both sides, some that are fronting the parking lots. And so you have that additional traffic. Many people do. So the question is, do you have any evidence showing that is going to materially harm you, your specific property value in that way? And that's unfortunately, that's really what we're looking for, whether it's the property value or your personal selves, that harm or burden specific to proximal.
Oh, so you're saying like the parking lots like behind my backyard, that's gonna hard like equally for the neighbor on 3948 as mine?
I'm not saying that. I'm asking if you have evidence.
What kind of evidence? Like what evidence do you want me to show? Like you want to stare into my flashlight? I mean, like the flashlight will not go to the 3948. It's gonna just shooting into my bedroom, right?
Sir, I think some of
What
these-
kind of evidence do you need from that, I guess?
I mean, I think these are some of the questions and issues that were addressed by the Planning Commission. And 2, 3 meetings, public comment, consultants were brought in, evidence was taken, they deliberated. These sorts of questions were addressed, or an opportunity to address. So we're not in the position of the Planning Commission when we're not doing a second bite at the apple. We're not looking at it fresh and saying that they made the right decision or the wrong decision. We have a very narrow question to decide. And even if we get to the merits of the application, it's not a fresh look. It's very high standard to say that they really went outside. There was a serious material factual error. There was an abuse of discretion. I mean, these are things that are much higher bars for us than, I mean, I can understand the disappointment that homeowners have when something like this is built. Mr. Eisenbacher has addressed it. It's not something we're not sympathetic to, but we're not the Planning Commission when we're hearing this appeal.
We do bring up our concerns and questions to the Plan Commission, but they still like vetoed it, and then they proceed with this. And that's why we do the appeal, right? Otherwise, why do we have to like spend extra $500 on this appealing application? And that's why I'm here, because I want the appeal. I'm not sure, I'm not saying like you're doing the Planning Commission's job. I'm just here to show like my concerns or my question was not resolved by the Planning Commission. That's why I'm here.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions? We do appreciate it. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, we'll open up the public comment again. So public hearing is open. If members of the public wish to speak. If you would like to address the board.
Pete Wilkins, 3905 Wayfarer Drive. Just to clarify the rules of this meeting, you had mentioned in the beginning, I think, Paul, you had mentioned in the beginning that if there was not a full council here, that it could be deferred. Are we at a full council, or I see a name here that's empty, so I wasn't sure if that was part of the council.
I didn't say that. I didn't address that.
Okay. What was the language specifically that was used?
Our rules of procedure, which were read at the beginning of the hearing, is that if there isn't a full board, the board has the option.
The board has the option.
The applicant can request it, but ultimately it's the board's decision whether to postpone the hearing for the next meeting when there's a full board.
Okay. And just to clarify, we are not at a full board right now, correct?
There are six members, and one member is not here tonight.
Member's not here.
So it's 6 versus 7, yes.
Should we read that just so it's on the record again?
Well, I mean, we read it before, but
It's true.
you
I guess
can.
the specific quote is, "If there is less than a full board, 7 members, present at a meeting, an applicant may request a postponement so his or her request can be heard by a full board. If there's no request for a postponement, the applicant will then be given an opportunity to address the board to explain the justification for the action requested." So that sounds as though they're indicating that request would have happened prior to them pleading their case. At least this
That's
is
correct, yes. Before we open up the case, there's an opportunity, with there not being a full board, to request an adjournment. Once we begin to hear the case, then we're hearing the case.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you for clarifying.
But thank you, it's a good question. Mr. Desmond, I know you already read or summarized the written correspondence. I'll ask the city attorney, should Mr. Desmond
do it again?
quickly rehash the same written correspondence?
I think just to preserve the record, I would appreciate
Okay. Back here. So we had 3 items. One from Mr. Richard Otto, who is from Otto Construction. He is the owner of the neighborhood node site for Wooded Square Apartments, and he is in favor of proceeding. And we also have 2 in opposition to it. One from Mr. Lawrence Hugh, 2046 Applewood Drive. The other from Ms. Brenda Lewis, 2030 Applewood Drive. They both oppose based on the increase in traffic, lack of green space, possible property value reduction, congestion, and potential crime increases.
All right, thank you, Mr. Desmond. Okay, I'll close the public hearing. Take it back to the board. I see Mr. Green with his hand up.
I have a question, and it's pursuant to the last public comment that we received other than the letters. I am curious, before even moving forward to the next thought that I have, if the applicant feels that they would be able to produce material evidence given additional time, would this board be willing to postpone if, for fairness, the property owner of the potential apartments was also willing to postpone for additional evidence if we were up for it?
Mr. Desmond.
The only issue that I would see with that is because the 2 cases are so similar. If one case was offered the opportunity, the other wasn't, I don't know what legal dynamics that creates, but I can't imagine it's good. But beyond that, I would not be opposed to it, but yeah, I don't know if that's a thing.
Yeah, Mr. McCauley.
I would be opposed to it, because I think it does open up some things that get tricky and make things very uncomfortable for a number of people for no reason. As we've listened to 2 applicants on the same type thing, again, I've not heard any aggrieved or special damages. So from that standpoint, and they're building by right, so there's not anything outside of city ordinances or requirements that they're not meeting. I just don't feel there's no standing, unfortunately.
For the record, I tend to agree. I just wanted to present that to the board.
I have a question with regarding to standing. Is this, there was 3 points for standing, am I correct in that? Was this the same dynamic where we have to meet all 3, or one of?
All.
Okay,
All 3.
all right. I was mistaken in that then. I thought it was, can any of them be proven? But it's more like our criteria where we have to name off all 5. Okay.
Correct. Any discussion else from the board or a motion? Mr. Green?
I'll do it. Based on the fact that, as has been said by other members of the board and myself, the to the best of our recognition, I have not seen evidence of the specific, the special damage having been incurred or being likely to be incurred in the form of actual evidence. I move to note that this applicant has no standing to deny the appeal.
So a motion to deny based
To
on
deny
lack
the
of
appeal,
standing.
correct.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
Mr. McCauley seconds. Any further discussion from the board? All right, Mr. Evans, we're ready to vote on a motion to deny based on lack of standing.
Ms. Chambers,
Yes.
Mr. Green,
Yes.
Mr. McCauley,
Yes.
Mr. Bossenbrook,
Yes.
Mr. Eisenbacher,
Yes.
Mr. Desmond.
Yes.
Motion to deny has been granted. All right, we will, actually, it's 8:37. We've been at it for about an hour and 40 minutes. I would propose to the board that we just take maybe a 5-minute break before we
Second.
handle our final case. So we will adjourn for approximately 5 minutes. back in session, and we are up to our, find my agenda, item 5C, which is this is a variance request now at 801 Hannah. So we'll start, Mr. Evans, if you could introduce it for us.
Yes, and this is a variance request to allow a proposed home addition to be set back 10 feet from the front west property line, where the zoning ordinance requires a 40-foot setback. Now, in these aerials here, we've shown the neighborhood property lines. This is South Boulevard. We have Rochester to the right, and the subject property on Hannah is outlined in red. And I'll continue to zoom in. There's a subject property, and everything you see in yellow is single-family residential zoning. And so what I want to point out here is that there is right here a dedicated public right-of-way that is undeveloped. Okay, now the subject matter involves an addition they want to put onto the house. And these are out of your packet, but they want to put the addition, and the result will be that it will be 10 feet from the west property line. Well, this particular property, the zoning ordinance says you have to have a setback from the front lot line of 40 feet, and the ordinance defines front lot line in a few ways, because we have to know where the front lot line is in order to apply the ordinance. It says in the case of an interior lot, the line separating a said lot from the right-of-way. In this example here, the property next door I'll use as I'm sorry, let's use this one right here, 765. We won't use that one, we'll use 807. 'Cause this right-of-way goes up here too. This is an interior lot, so it's pretty simple. We know that this is the front property line because this is adjacent to the right-of-way. The ordinance goes on to say in the case of a corner lot, both lines separating the lot from the street shall be considered front lot lines. So let's use 726. Here's a corner lot. I'm going to use 670. That's even better because Norton is developed here. So you've got, so these two are considered front lot lines. The applicant has, well, it also goes on to say a through lot. So a through lot is where you have streets on two opposing sides. Which one is the front and which one is the back? Well, it says the side that provides access to the property is considered the front. So in this matter, for 841 Hannah, here's your front lot line, here's your rear lot line. The ordinance stops there. This subject property is adjacent to 3 public right-of-ways. And it's clear, other than a through lot, that in the majority of the cases, if it's adjacent to a public right-of-way, we consider it a front lot line. That's being the interpretation here. So this property, we've interpreted that the west property line is a front lot line, and therefore to develop 10 feet away and not 40 feet away, the applicant seeks a variance. Now, the applicant has requested that City Council vacate this public right-of-way, and the applicant was denied earlier this year, so now he's seeking relief from the board for the setback. So I'll turn it back over to the board with any questions.
I see Mr. Green's hand up.
Just to re-clarify, that public right-of-way, is it currently in use for utilities or? And not the right-of-way, pardon, the public, that section there, is it currently?
It's not a paved road.
Mr. McCauley.
Do we know why the city would not vacate that?
I didn't examine the issues clearly, but there was a recommendation by the Planning Commission and then a decision by City Council. So that was looked at by both those two boards, but I didn't look into it. I know the applicant obviously was there. Maybe they could shed some light on that. I do believe there are some materials in your packet that talk a little bit about that, but I didn't provide anything that would talk about the reasons why.
Mr. Eisenbacher.
Along the same lines, does the city do any maintenance on that property? Do they mow it? Has it been graded ever? Is it suitable for vehicles?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know.
I'm asking because of one of the statements at the bottom of one of our letters. Says it's used. Right-of-way is only a paper road that the neighborhood has used for over 40 years to safely access our dead-end street.
Perhaps, yeah, that's a public comment. In everything I've seen about this, it's been in an undeveloped state, meaning there's been no pavement there.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Evans. Any other questions? Members of the board, city staff? No? All right, we'll invite the applicant forward to present the variance request. And sir, if you could just identify yourself in relationship to the property. Welcome.
Good evening to the ZBA members. My name is Ali Apahidian. I'm the applicant for the variance request for property 801 Hannah. I'd like to start off with a short history of the property. The property at 801 Hannah was platted back in 1953 as part of the Clark Estate subdivision. It's the only lot, 801 Hannah is the only lot out of 72 lots that had road frontage on 3 platted roads, one of them being undeveloped as it exists today. Hannah to the south, 25 feet wide right-of-way on the west side from Bassett and Smith Flowing Acre subdivision, and Lovell on the north. This lot was originally platted with 130-foot wide frontage on Hannah. So my property was 130 feet wide, exactly like you see property at 802 and former properties to the south. They all were platted with 130 frontage and the easement that exists for all the other lots. Although road was never built in this easement, the city converted this easement years later into right-of-way. When this was done, the west property line of lot 65, which is 801 Hannah, was moved 30 feet to the east. This shift in the property line reduced the entire lot width from 130 to 100 feet. Today, lot 65 still exists as a lot with 3 road frontages because there's right-of-way to the west, and with a non-conforming house. The only reason why there is a non-conforming structure on this property is because the city converted a 30-foot easement to right-of-way. So fast forward to today. This non-conformity has created undue hardship for me as a property owner. 7 months ago, I spoke with the Troy Building Department regarding this non-conformity. I asked them if they would issue me a building permit if I ever wanted to make any improvements to this house in the future, like a deck or any kind of an addition. And they said no building permit would ever be issued unless I do either one of two things. Either I first have the city convert that 30 feet back to an easement or obtain a variance from the ZBA for the non-conforming setback on the west side of the house. This non-conformity exists only for my property in the entire subdivision. There are 5 other lots in the subdivision to the south, directly to the south, and you can actually see that right there, that were platted with this 30-foot easement, starting with 802. And you wouldn't be able to see that easement on a GIS map. You can't see that right there because that's not the easement. That's right-of-way that belongs to the subdivision to the west. And you wouldn't see that easement in the legal description of these properties to the south. The only way anyone would know that that easement is there is if you look on the original plat. My property is the only one that had this easement taken away and the lot width reduced by 30 feet. Section 14.01 of the zoning ordinance encourages property owners to bring non-conforming structures into compliance with the zoning ordinance. There are only 2 ways to do this without a variance. One way is to demolish the house and start all over, and this is not a feasible option. The more simple and logical solution would have been to restore that right-of-way or part of that right-of-way back to an easement, the way it was originally platted. So months ago, I decided to pursue the latter option. on July 9, 2024, I presented a right-of-way vacation request to the Planning Commission. And the purpose of that request was to restore the right-of-way back to an easement the way the lot was originally platted in order to permanently eliminate this nonconformity of the structure. If that request would have been granted, I would not be here this evening requesting this variance. The Planning Commission recommended to the City Council to deny the street vacation request. The only Planning Commissioner who voted in favor of eliminating this nonconformity was Mr. Fox, who's not here this evening. One of Mr. Fox's comments at that meeting indicated that he really understood the nature of the request, and one thing that he said was, and I quote, "I love seeing people at the ZBA, but not necessarily if it can be avoided," end quote. So on September 16th, 2024, the City Council accepted the recommendation of the Planning Commission and denied the most simple solution of just changing that right-of-way back to an easement or part of that right-of-way. So the City Council told me at that time to come to the ZBA and get a variance for the setback. They're the ones that recommended and told me to come before this board. The variance request is for the front yard setback on the west side of the property along the right-of-way that runs north and south between Hannah and Level. The zoning ordinance requires this setback to be 40 feet. The existing house is set back only 10 feet from the property line, and the request is for a variance of 30 feet for the setback on the west side of the house. I don't need a variance for the size of the addition because it's compliant with the ordinance. I don't need a variance for the front or rear setbacks because they are compliant. I only need a variance for the setback on the west side. So I will quickly go through the 5 conditions of practical difficulty for this request. Number 1, there are multiple exceptional characteristics about this property for which the variance is sought. The first exceptional characteristic is that this property is the only one in the subdivision with 3 lot frontages. The second exceptional characteristic is that it is adjacent to city right-of-way on the west side that was an easement in the past. The third exceptional characteristic is that the front yard setback on the west side used to be 40 feet, but now is only 10 feet because the original easement was changed to right-of-way. Second criteria, the characteristics that make compliance with dimensional requirements difficult is related to the premise for which the variance is sought, not some other location. The third requirement, the characteristics which make compliance with the dimensional requirements are not of a personal nature, and they are not, they are with the property. The fourth requirement, the characteristics which make compliance with dimensional requirements difficult were created by the City of Troy and a previous owner. And I'm requesting an exception from this specific practical difficulty because of the unique circumstance surrounding the history of this property. And the last one, number 5, is the proposed variance will not be harmful or alter the essential character of the area, and the existing structure is already 10 feet from the property line, and any future improvements to the property will also be a minimum of 10 feet from the property line. Any improvements to the property will not impair an adequate supply of light and air to the adjacent property or unreasonably increase the congestion in the public streets or increase the danger of fire or endanger the public safety or unreasonably diminish or impair established property value within the surrounding area or in any respect impair the public health, safety, comfort, morals, or welfare of the inhabitants of the city. So the ZBA is my last stop. This is my last stop right here. The building department said, sorry, we won't let you make any improvements to your house. The Planning Commission said, sorry, we won't give you the easement back. And the City Council said, sorry, you have other options. Go see how the ZBA can help you. After spending 7 months through the bureaucratic maze and thousands of dollars on the application fees and the surveys and the drawings, I'm here requesting approval of my variance application so I can do what all other property owners can do in Troy by right, and that's make improvements to the property I own. Thank you.
All right, thank you, sir. Any questions for a member of the board members? Yes, Mr. Green.
I have two. The first is, it's suggested, but I don't know if you know, do people currently use that unpaved space as a pass-through?
So let me answer
Your
that by
knowledge.
first describing that. That area is the first portion of that segment. If somebody zooms in on that drawing, you can see is actual driveway. So about almost half of that is my actual driveway. So you can see that in the drawing. The driveway is not on my property. That's another unique situation. So it's actually in the right of way. And because of the complexity and the intricacies of all this right-of-way issue and easement, it's the only driveway in the whole neighborhood that's gravel. I can't even pave it. So that area is not used by vehicles because it's not paved. It's partly wooded. It's not heavily wooded on the west side, but that's the other side of the right-of-way. I've never seen anybody walk through there. Some neighbors have said that people walk through there and use it as a shortcut. Well, the entire neighborhood doesn't have sidewalks. So Hannah doesn't have sidewalks, Lovell doesn't have sidewalks. So anybody using that area, walking up and down the street, they're walking on the edge of the roadway anyway without any sidewalks. So I've been told, I haven't seen anybody walk through there personally. But obviously, being a right-of-way, people can access that. It's open. But I brought this up with the city on another issue of liability, that people walking in my driveway, if they actually get injured, I'm not sure where the liability is. They're actually in my driveway where vehicles are parked. If somebody gets injured, it's on city property. Is the city responsible for the liability? So that's another issue. So, yeah, people, anybody that walks through there is responsible for their own safety.
So just to clarify on that one, that wasn't even what I was thinking, but your property ends at the red,
Correct.
but that driveway used to be part of the property.
Yes, it used to be.
So the second question is, when you purchased the property, was it like that?
It was.
Okay.
Mr. McCauley?
So you purchased that property knowing that that easement was there already?
Yes,
Okay. Second question is, do you live there now?
I do not.
So you wouldn't have any knowledge of people walking through there on a regular basis,
I do.
not being there?
I do know because I ask the people that live there, I ask them all the time.
Okay, secondhand information.
And I drive by there all the time because I live very close. So I live in Troy, so it's not secondhand
I'm
information.
looking at that garage proposal. Where would you enter that garage from?
Same location as it's being entered now because there is a side garage, the existing garage is a side entry, and it would be the exact same way. The driveway would just be extended to access the doors in the public right-of-way. The way it's public right-of-way, it would just be the driveway extended another, whatever the distance that's needed to access the garage.
So you have like a 3-deep car garage, not 4 going across sideways, 1 car deep?
I'm sorry, what was the
If
question?
I look at that, if you're entering off Hannah, is what you're telling me, through a driveway?
Correct.
That means that you have 4 cars deep in there, front to back, opposed to sideways, running east and west, that would be entering from the easement area.
The garage as it is today is a side entry, entering from the right-of-way side. It's not, the entry is not from Hannah. The front doors of the garage door is on the west side.
So the garage door, will there be additional garage doors to the current one?
Yes, if you look at the drawings, the proposed addition is a modification to what's there today.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question, and maybe no one knows this anymore, but do you know anything about the circumstances? I think this was all the way back in the 1950s or so, when there was this converting from the easement to the right-of-way. Did the city, was it a voluntary, transferred? Was it was there a condemnation, eminent domain sort of action, or do you know the circumstances in which why that happened?
I do. The history based on the information that my due diligence and also the planning department, when I initially submitted the application, was that after this neighborhood was platted, probably 6, 7, 8 years later, that right of way, whatever was easement, that 30-feet easement, was actually conveyed to the city by the property owner at that time, because the city had some future plans to actually put a water main through that. And at some time in the future, they did. So today, there is a water main through that 30-foot easement going from Hannah all the way to Level.
Okay. All right, thank you. Any other questions? Yeah, Mr. Eisenbacher.
Do you know if that water main, the location of it, is it within that 30 feet that was your property, or is it beyond that?
It's within 30 feet from the property line to in that 30-foot right-of-way. There actually, this map doesn't show, but there are actually 2 separate right-of-ways there. There's a 30 feet, and then there's an additional 25 feet that belongs to this subdivision. So it's 2 completely separate, but that water main is in that 30 feet. Yes.
Is it close to the edge of that 30 feet, or is it?
I don't know exactly the exact location. I just know that engineering actually indicated that it is in that. So I don't know if it's centered in that 30 feet. I can tell you.
Okay, 'cause that makes sense why they wouldn't want to vacate the easement, because they got an asset in there.
Yeah, but so the city of Troy has vacated right-of-ways with utility lines in it in the past 50 years, all the time. I mean, they've done that. I mean, there are properties throughout the city that they've vacated. So this one was the different aspect. I don't want to get into that detail of it, but they have, yeah. So there is that utility line there, but yeah.
So any building plans you would have obviously can't be on top of, well, it's still on your property. You wouldn't extend over, correct?
Right, yeah. Nothing will go cross the property line. I mean, right now, the existing structure is 10 feet from the property line. I mean, the request for the variance is just for 30 feet. I'm not requesting a variance of basically, it would be, I wouldn't be encroaching. If I'd be requesting a different variance, it would be encroaching in that 10-foot setback, but that's not what I want to do. So, and one thing that I just wanted to mention is, I guess the way the variance process is, I can't just come to the zoning board and request a variance for a setback. I have to request a variance for a setback with the project.
Use variance.
So yes, so that's the way I had to request this variance.
So just as like a hypothetical, I mean, because the access is on that right-of-way, if for some reason the city of Troy had to access that water main to do any repairs or whatever, that would impact your ability, whoever is on the property, their ability to park their cars and utilize the garage.
It would temporarily, yes.
Yeah.
That would be the case today as well.
Okay.
I communicated that with engineering and asked them how that would work, even though I guess the water main was replaced in 2000 from what I was told, so the water main has a life of 50 years plus, and so I guess 25 years, at least 25 more years, they're not replacing that water main. But yeah, whatever access the city needs to get in there, and it was the same way even with an easement, like for all the properties to the south, that's the purpose of the easement. The city can have access to that anytime for any reason.
Right. Okay. Thank you, sir. Any other questions? I think we're good? Okay, thank you. All right, we will open up the public hearing. If there's any member of the public who wishes to speak on as to the variance request, you're welcome to step forward to the podium and introduce yourself and give us your support or lack of support. Good evening, sir.
My name is John Terenzi. I live at 841 Hannah. I was just here to say that people do use that right-of-way as a walkthrough. The applicant doesn't live there, so he doesn't know. Also, asking you to deny the applicant the request because the proposed house is really large. It does not fit in with the rest of the sub. All the houses on the street are ranch-style homes except for one. It's a colonial. There's another house, I believe it's 862 or 882, which was added on to, gone up, and it kind of sticks out. It doesn't really look good. And honestly, I think, if you look at the renderings that he submitted, a house structure that large, 10 feet from the property line, that's kind of excessive. The residents that actually live on the street, we like the country setting. We kind of want to keep things the way it is. That's pretty much all I have to say. Thank you.
All right, thank you, sir. Any questions for the? Any questions? Nope. All right. Oh, Mr. Eisenbacher.
It looks like all the other houses in the neighborhood have 10-foot setbacks from the side, roughly. Is that? I missed the part. Is it R1D, R1E?
R1B.
R1B, okay, thank you.
Yeah, the setbacks there, 10 feet on, you can go as low as 10 on one side, but when you add both of them up, each side, it has to be at least 25.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Mr. Desmond, I think we have a few written correspondence for the record.
We do. We have 3. One of them is from Mr. John Terenzi, who we just heard from, reiterating basically what he just said on Mike. The other 2, both opposed, Miss Allison Sloan at 321 Hannah, and Randy and Sheila Gull at 6579 Norton. They all indicate that they use the right-of-way. They travel on it to bypass Lovell or Lovell, I'm not sure how you say it, the next street. There's not a lot of specific, they're opposed to it. There's not a lot of specific indications as to direct reasons. A couple references to it not fitting in with the characteristic of the other ranches in the neighborhood and that they wanted to stay as a dead end. And one person had concern that they don't consider it to have 3 frontages, which is apparently what had been proposed prior. So that's what we've got.
Okay. All right, thank you, Mr. Desmond. All right, we'll close the public hearing. At this point, we will take it back for our own discussion as a board. Any comments or a member who wishes to be recognized to make a motion?
I just want a little, just quick clarity. So this was supposed to be a road, didn't make it into a road. Then originally it was, at some point it was supposed to be a road. That was the original idea, right? And then, but since that never happened, this wouldn't actually be considered 3 front setbacks, right? Just, it's got an easement that.
No, I think the easement, no, that's actually public right-of-way.
Okay, so does that actually constitute 3
Yeah.
front setbacks then? Okay, all right. That's pretty regular.
Mr. Green.
I'm quite sympathetic to the applicant on several points here. I completely agree. It's quite odd. The driveway is quite odd. It was not, this hardship was not created by him. I understand the thought process behind impairing, changing the feel of the neighborhood from the neighbors, but I think broadly it won't even encroach into that right of way. People will still be able to walk through because it's still city property. Should this pass, I feel that the applicant meets our requirements, except for whether my question is more on whether due diligence was done if this was how it was when he purchased the property. But I'm not sure we'll push that out of scope. I struggle with that particular point. But broadly, the applicant's case makes sense to me.
Was that
All
a
right.
motion?
We're going to present a motion, or are you
No,
holding back? Okay. And Mr. McCauley?
As I look at that property, the 100-foot is consistent with all the other properties except the one across the street from it on Hannah. And if I look at the other properties also, that some people have accessed their property from level for garages and that type of thing, or they're non-attached. So that way that air and space is not affected as if you're putting it right next to it. When I was reading the city, why wouldn't the city vacate that for him to be able to put that on there? That was my question. So I went and found their reasoning behind it, and why the planning commission also, that the city council agreed with the planning department, that there's no benefit of the right-of-way to be vacated. They want their preference to maintain the utilities in the right-of-way would be affected by it, and specifically acquired the water main and construction would be there. So from my standpoint, I look at that could interfere with the city's access to it, even to the point where I want to say we've had this conversation with something similar to this, in the sense that his driveway, it might be on city property or easement right now. If they went in and had to tear that up, he'd have to repair the driveway at his own cost, because that's part of the city easement, even to the point where they might be just saying, we're not going to make a big deal out of it because it's there, but realistically, it shouldn't be there, in a sense. So as I look at it, and with the consistency of the neighborhood and keeping that available in that green space, which is becoming less and less in Troy, that I'm not in favor of this, simply because I want to keep that right away available to the city for the maintaining our infrastructure, or if eventually something does change, that it does happen at that point in time.
Mr. Green?
In direct response to that, the applicant isn't asking to go into the right-of-way. He is asking for an easement within his own property so that he can reconstruct what's already there to the line where it already is. So I don't see that particular point would impair. He lost out on the ability to either reverse the right-of-way decision or whatever that might be. He's only looking for within his own property. So to me, while I agree, it's on page 237 of 239 of the packet, is the city's reasoning from, the council's reasoning from that resolution. I understand why they denied that, but I don't actually think that their arguments are germane to the case in front of us.
So he's not, but just, Mr. Grant, maybe you misspoke. He's not asking for an easement. He's asking for a variance to the setback.
Pardon, yes.
Okay.
From 40 feet to 10 feet.
Right.
But
40 feet for a street.
Right. But as built.
Yeah.
Correct.
As already existing.
Right.
I misspoke.
No, that's fine. All right, any other member of the board? Not hearing discussion, so motion to move one way or the other. Mr. Green, would you like to present a motion?
Yep. Let me get up to that page, sorry. Let's see. I move to accept to approve the variance request by the applicant at 801 Hannah, because I believe that the applicant has demonstrated that the exceptional characteristics of the property for which the variance is sought make compliance with dimensional requirements substantially more difficult than it would be for the great majority, while those next to him may be less of an issue. Those to his south, as noted, which are the most comparable properties, do not have the burden that he does. The characteristics making the compliance difficult, dimensional requirements difficult, are directly related to his premises. The characteristics it's not of a personal nature. The property is as it was. Anybody doing anything to their property would have to address this in this situation. The characteristics making compliance with dimensional requirements difficult were not created by himself or the previous owner so much as the city. And the variance, in my mind, because it does not actually block off the right-of-way would not be harmful to or alter the essential character of the area in which it is located.
Second.
All right, motion from Mr. Green to approve the variance, seconded by Mr. Desmond. Unless any member of the board wants to further discuss? Nope, okay, I think we're ready for a vote. Mr. Evans, this is a motion to grant, so yes is to grant, no is to not grant.
Mr. Desmond?
Yes.
Mr. Green?
Yes.
Mr. McCauley?
No.
Mr. Bossenbrook?
Yes.
Ms. Chambers?
Yes.
Mr. Eisenbacher?
Yes.
All right, the motion to grant the variance has passed, 5 votes in favor. So thank you to the applicant for your presentation tonight. That brings us through our cases tonight. We will now move on to item 6, our communications. Any communications, Mr. Evans?
We do have one. On November 11th, in response to the board brought up last month about zoning ordinance text amendments initiated by the Zoning Board of Appeals. It wasn't in your packet, but it was at the days for you. Mr. Sabanan wrote a kind of a guidance memo.
Okay.
And at least in my opinion, I think the board has some options. They could either perhaps make a resolution tonight for specific recommendations to the Planning Commission, or now that you have the guidance, and we're talking about it first, this could be put on a future agenda to give appeals members thoughts as to what they might want to talk about, or if the board wants to do something else, you could. So this is just a guidance memo that you guys asked for last time.
All right. I guess my thought would be maybe we take some time to digest it and maybe take it up at a future meeting. Would make sense to me.
Agreed.
Yeah, Mr. McCauley.
I agree. I think this is something that we should seriously look into, especially for that area, and how we can help service them better. In the long run, there might be something that we put together as if we can do like a subcommittee or something, like a couple people research it, come up with options and bring them back to the board in the future, not this week, not next month, but in the next year, because we're not getting any pressing construction questions over the winter, I would think. Our agenda might be a little bit later, and might be a time where we can explore something like this.
Okay, well, I think that makes sense. I think maybe, I don't know that I have a date certain in mind, but maybe we can.
If desired, I could just have this as keep it on future agendas, and or maybe if the board doesn't want it on a future agenda, you guys can let me know and I should put it back on, or just use this and bring it up as perhaps a miscellaneous business item at one of your future meetings.
Yeah, I think Mr. Fox is one of the ones who requested it, and he's not here tonight. So maybe January, maybe we could put it on the January agenda and just as a miscellaneous item to take up again.
If we have a real item.
Right. Yeah, I mean, not looking for work to do, but.
How about on the next available agenda? Because we don't have any agenda items besides this for December.
Okay.
And the deadline. So if we, how about the next? So I think what I'm hearing you saying is put on the next available agenda that has some additional items.
Or some discussion.
Right? Okay.
Yes.
Got it.
Okay. Well, we appreciate Mr. Savanant putting that together for us, and we'll take some time to mull it over the holidays. Any other communications, Mr. Evans?
No more communications.
Okay. We have a miscellaneous business item for, I guess, you have something, Mr. Eisenbacher?
When we get to the point of talking about items not on the agenda, the discussion by board members. I'm forgetting the item exactly.
Like 9 or something, yeah.
7. 7 after the meeting schedule discussion.
Okay.
If I may.
Sure. All right. Well, let's do the 2025 meeting schedule. I think you put that in the agenda packet.
Yeah, I don't recall, this just follows what's stipulated otherwise. I guess it's out there for an informational item. I'm not sure we have to take action on it. I don't think we've done that in the past.
We have to prove it?
No, it has to be posted on the
Yeah,
board, that's it.
yeah.
Yeah.
But this is more
They tell
miscellaneous
us.
business, to let everybody be aware that these are the proposed third Tuesdays of each month.
Okay. All right. Well, put it on your calendars, everybody.
Okay?
And now, Mr. Eisenbacher.
Yes. I have a request that we improve the communication of the appeals process, because after that item was over, had one of the applicants speak to me, and he was not clear at all about the rules of evidence. And obviously, I don't think they would have spent the money and the time and the effort to have this if they understood what rules of evidence they needed, because they didn't, unfortunately, they didn't have substance for us to consider based on our vote. If we could include those slides that were created and the memo from the attorney, when someone comes to the counter and asks, if they come and ask for the appeals.
Let me tell you what happened in this particular case. The gentleman who was assisting both applicants and made the PowerPoint, he called me and posed the question. I asked him to put it in writing so we could come back with some more clear information, which we did. And one of the things that we specifically told him were not very close to exactly what was in that. And we told him, you first got to do standing, then you got to do, so everything that was in the memo, he was told.
Okay.
And almost so the memo wasn't written yet because we had no application, so we didn't ask the city attorney's office to provide a guidance memo for the board. But they did provide guidance that a significant amount of that information, including the process for standing, was in there.
Okay.
And the first time I spoke to either applicant was, I believe, after the applications came in, and I explained to them that we usually have a pre-application meeting regarding these things, and I also went over that information with them. So, we could try to do something like that now and use this as a learning experience. Maybe try to put something in writing when people ask about that, but
We can't exactly prevent them from putting in an application and require them to have a meeting first. That's their right.
Yeah, I say that, and I do that because most of our applicants are homeowners. They're not familiar with the process, and we want them to have an understanding of how it works before they apply. We wouldn't want someone coming in having no idea what these standards are, hearing it for the first time here and saying, why am I doing this? Either I don't have a variance, so we want them to understand, and also have a comfort level as that, the board are your peers, even though they're on the board. It's not like you're in court doing this. So that's been very helpful. So, Mr. Eisenbacher, I do hear what you're saying.
You did it.
Yep. Yes. What did you say, I did or I didn't?
You did.
Okay,
You did
good.
it. You did it.
We did try to do that initially. We can use this as perhaps, now that we have these slides, to refer to those.
Well, I guess I would also say, we now have, a memo from the city attorney's office that, it's a public memo. It's been part of our agenda packet, so I don't see any reason why, if this were to come up, these don't happen very often, but if this were to come up again, we could
Share it.
print a copy of the same memo,
We could direct them to it. And
assume
say-
that the law hasn't changed,
Right, like if there's different
and,
case law. could
assume the
change.
law hasn't changed.
Yeah.
Here's, we've done this before, and here's the guidance to help you, if you so choose to to follow it.
Right, yes, and everything you saw tonight is going to be in our files. So,
And I searched
that's a good
special.
suggestion.
I searched special damages zoning, and several links come up, and all of them refer to the Michigan Supreme Court decision with the same verbiage on all of the same ones.
Right.
So had they Google searched, they would have at least found that and gone, what's a special damage? And I think it sounds very much like, as you described.
Yeah, Mr. McCauley.
First of all, I'd like to thank City Council and Mr. Evans for doing those pre-meetings. I can't imagine how many applicants you've showed them what they should and couldn't do, and they made the decision not to apply. So you're saving them money and time and everything else, or giving them guidance on how to do it. We appreciate your making that effort, because not every city does that, so. And also the guidance from our attorney's offices, as far as, like I said, now we've got a document to work from. So do homeowners.
Yes, thank you for all your pre-work. It helps us out. Anything else for the miscellaneous business? We good? All right.
Thanks.
Any public comment? We do have public comment. This is
Amazing.
This is amazing.
Stayed.
Good evening, Ali Abahidian again. I have a question for clarification either by the board or by city staff regarding the variance specifically that was granted tonight for my application. Is that variance a variance that is tied directly to this project that I have applied for, or if I make modifications to the project in any way, that variance is still valid regardless of what changes I make, as long as I don't encroach in at 10 feet, as long as that variance stays constant at 30 feet?
Yes, Mr. Evans.
That variance is specific to what was presented to the board tonight, and that information did include that there was an addition to the house, a very specific addition in a very specific location. So the variance is for what was in the packet tonight.
So that means hypothetically, if I make a modification and make a reduction and reduce the garage by 1 unit, I have to come back before this board and request the same variance all over again with a new drawing?
You know, we've had requests where people want to enlarge, but not reduce.
Yeah.
I think we should consider it. I think it's premature to answer that question without seeing specifically what you might be doing.
Or I guess my question is more generic. Any modification that I would make to whatever was proposed tonight, as long as I don't encroach in that 30 feet that was granted, I have to come before the board and apply again
Without seeing it, I don't think we can accurately answer that. We'd have to see specifically what you want to do and how it compares to what was presented in your application and approved tonight.
Well, I'm just specifically referring to that setback. As long as that setback isn't encroached in, let's say.
I can't answer that because I need to see it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it sounds like possibly yes, that every time I make a change, I have to come before this board and reapply and submit a fee.
No, that's not what I'm saying. I want to be very clear.
Okay.
We need to see it.
Okay.
Okay? Provide us plans, and we can give you an accurate assessment once we see it.
Okay.
Mr. McCauley.
And just to be clear, the reason why I voted no is because I heard you and you said that you had to put a plan in front of us to get that setback. So not particularly planning to build that garage, but do something else. So that's just a point of information for you.
Yeah, I understand that. That's, yeah, but I guess that was my question. It sounds like it's still a gray area. I just wanted to make sure. I don't want to come before this board 3-4 times if I decide to make some changes, and it sounds like the process is I present it to you first, and you make that call if I have to apply again.
The zoning administrator will make the call, correct?
Okay, all right, thank you.
All right, thank you, sir. No other public comment? You said, Mr. Evans, we don't have an agenda for next month?
Right. The application deadline has passed, and we have no cases to hear.
All right, I guess that means we will see everybody in 2025. So enjoy your holidays, and we'll see you in the new year.